Welcome to 9 Bob Note with Paul Isles-Rush and Ken Moss.
Hello everybody and welcome to 9 Bob Note. I am Paul.
And I'm Ken.
We've been away for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And quite a lot has happened, and I think there's only one thing that we can talk about this week, Ken, and that is Her Majesty.
Usually we would have been straight on the mic for this, but it's been, Paul, you've had some rather esteemed guests over from Texas.
We have, yes.
Who are some good friends, Mark and Paul, who came to stay at precisely the time that the Queen died. I mean, in terms of their timing, what a time to come over to England.
Absolutely, yes.
But it has sort of curtailed all your free time, so we've not had a chance to. So it's not a lack of effort or disrespect on our part. We've just literally not had the time to react. And frankly, I think it's hit us both a little harder than we thought it would.
Yes. Yeah, as you say, Mark and Paul came to visit us. They arrived on the Wednesday and they were just, first of all, just talking about the pictures that have been in the press about the Queen meeting Liz Truss. And sort of saying, I can't believe she's still working at 96, still doing that. And the pictures that were released.
I was about to say, I can't believe she's made it to Prime Minister.
Well, that's a different episode. But yeah, then on the Thursday, the news started coming through. And we were messaging each other, of course. The Queen was under medical supervision and stuff. We both sort of felt there was something different about this time. There's often been reports that the Queen's been to the hospital or been to see the doctor or been advised to rest. But there was something different. There was something in Hugh Edwards' tone that suggested...
Well, I think the word comfortable set massive alarm bells ringing in my head. When they all started gathering, being flown up to Balmoral or driven up or trained or whatever, that doesn't bode well when the family's called to the bedside and then all programming has been suspended. I think we know.
Yes.
But I mean, there's still that glimmer within you that you just think, no, not now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it came through a couple of hours later. We clearly both had the same reaction. It was, coincidentally, my 23rd anniversary of hosting quiz nights. So the happy, jolly hockey sticks version of events that I was going to do was quickly replaced by the national anthem. And it's certainly not one that I'll forget, but you asked if I was going to the quiz, and I thought that it was because you thought I would be broken-hearted. It was actually because Mark and Paul were.
It was a bit of both.
Bit of both, though. Yeah, I must admit, I did contemplate giving it a miss, but I thought, well, people that go to the quiz, they might not care. Not everybody's going to feel the same way about it, but the atmosphere was very reverential. I mean, you were there.
Yes.
People were standing at the end of the night for the national anthem. They don't do that in 2022. That was quite something. Yeah.
The pub where we were, I thought the way that they reacted was a little bit... We asked the landlady when we arrived, because we were going for something to eat first and the news hadn't broken then. But we asked, can you put the TV on in here just so we could watch the news? And she said, no, the TV's broken. But then there was some sport on the TV. And so when I got the news through on my phone at 6:30, I think it was actually preceded by a message from you.
Was it that profane one again?
It was.
Yes. I've got special profanities that I use for the deaths of royal family.
Yeah, but even then, I went through and I said, can you put the news on, please? And she went, oh, yeah, just a minute. But I know what it is, though. The Queen's died. And I thought...
I know. Well, I'm not going to name the pub or the landlady, but... there's been a seismic shift in the attitude within that pub, and it's. I was shocked that night by the level of disrespect. Is going a little bit far, but just disinterest in a major event for the country.
Yeah, this episode, I don't want us to spend any time talking about the people who have subsequently been blocked and things.
Yes,
but. It's a community pub, and it's the kind of time that you remember being together as a community. And Although obviously you brought it all together with the with the quiz and the national anthem, and the tone. It was just, and as you say, fair enough. Some people don't care, but a lot of people do. It was just, maybe the next day, if you've got a DJ booked on the Friday and you think, well, we're still going to have a DJ, absolutely fine. But the moment the news has broken,
I was very disappointed with their conduct that night. I will say this much, even the younger ones, and there's some that are a good 20, 25 years younger than us come to the quiz, they were reverential about it. In fact, the younger team showed more respect than some of the older ones. I was surprised by the reaction that there was from the public.
Yes. We have done an episode about the Queen quite recently for Platinum Jubilee, so it comes as no surprise to anyone that we were both very upset by it. But I think it's quite nice that we've had this time so that we didn't go straight on the day after and just because now we've had the mourning period, we've had the queue, the lying in state.
Yes, a Netflix 16-hour drama coming soon.
Yeah. And of course, we've had the funeral. So it's kind of nice to look back, to reflect without being immediately reactive to the news.
I'll agree with that, actually. It's given us a broader spectrum of processing, I suppose, if for want of a better word. But the amount of blocking that I've done, the amount of people that I have been associated with and done work with who, I've said this quite openly, they put all these virtue signalling things in their bio about what a good person they are and then they're openly wishing death on the Queen. This was before it had been announced. Basically dancing on her grave, and you've got hashtag be kind in their bio. It doesn't square with me, and I'm not prepared to. If getting ahead in life means associating with producers and artists that have those sort of values, I'd rather not progress in life than be associated with people like that. I just don't find it very kind. Everybody's got different opinions on lots of different things. It doesn't mean you have to disrespect those opinions or be vile about them.
No. And there's a lot of people who don't agree with the monarchy or who didn't like the Queen for whatever reason. We know a few people like that who have openly said, I don't like the Queen. But since she died, they've not been messaging us. There's one example, I don't particularly want to name him, but, he's been quiet on the subject. And it goes back to if you haven't got anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. He recognises that it means a lot to us. And so it's like, well, fair enough. I've got a different opinion. I'm not going to come out and start saying things that I don't mean about the Queen. But there's absolutely no need to go the other way.
The other way, there was some, we're not doing it this time because it's not the tone of the podcast, but if we were doing Twitter, bollocks to it, I'm going to throw in a Twitter twatter right here.
I believe Twitter Twatter was Her Majesty's favourite feature of Nine Bob Nolt.
Tuned in every episode.
She did. With
the corgis by her side. This week's victim to be cast headfirst into the bin, never to return, is Uju Anya, a professor in the field of applied linguistics, anti-racist, feminist, 2 rainbow flags, language learning and teaching, blackness in multilingualism, views are mine. From Pittsburgh. You're going in the bin, love. The tweet has been deleted since. But it was along the lines of Queen Elizabeth II was a colonialist and empirical and enslaved my race, all that sort of thing. May she die in excruciating pain. Now, I think most other people would have been hurled off Twitter for that. Oh, no, not her. Because she's black, and that does seem to afford people some sort of cushion. But that was a hateful thing to say. I don't care what professor you are. The Queen was not a colonialist. She was not trying to hold the British Empire together. There's bits of the Commonwealth have broken off while she's been on the throne. It's not in... Well, it is in her power to try and stop them, but she hasn't. She's not been fighting to keep the... If they want to go. Good luck to you. Personally speaking, I would be happy to see the Commonwealth broken up. If those countries now want to go and stand on their own and not be part of or seen to be part of basically the British Empire Mark II, I'm fine with that. I don't really see the point of the Commonwealth anymore. But to come out with the fact that, these statements that all these people that love the Queen, they're trying to keep the British Empire together, they're deluding themselves, it's a lot of bloody rubbish.
Yes.
And it's just an excuse to beat the Britain is racist drum. I don't believe that for a second. I don't, generally on the whole.
Yeah, and we've spoken before about things, I mean, the royal family are not the perfect family. They're a dysfunctional family, much like all of our
every
families
other
are.
family that we know, yes.
And it just so happens that they have a lot more money than most of us. And also their dysfunctions are in plain view of everyone else. But I don't believe for one second, regardless of what you think about other members of the royal family, I don't believe that the Queen had a bad bone in her body.
As monarchs go, we could not have wished for somebody better. I mean, the Queen herself rarely put a foot wrong. There were a few notable exceptions which could have done better. The only two that I can think of off the top of my head are Aberfan and the death of Diana. I think those two were slight missteps. But in 70 years, 2 bollock drops, I don't think it's too bad, is it?
Yeah. And when we're talking, because obviously Diana has been spoken about a lot these last couple of weeks, but even then, she was in an impossible situation.
Yes.
She had openly fallen out with Diana. She clearly didn't like her, not necessarily because of who she was, but because of the damage she saw that Diana had caused to the family. Of course, she's going to defend her son, Prince Charles. And so she was like, well, I don't know what to do. How do I react? And it's like we were saying about our Republican friend earlier. She sort of stayed away and didn't really do anything. And then she got criticised for that. And then she came out and made a statement in which she didn't say, oh, yeah, I love Diana and I'm really sorry. But she did say, I'm sorry that, she's dead. She was the mother of my grandchildren. And also, I understand that, how you all felt about her in the country. But then it was like, well, that wasn't really any good, was it? It's like, she's only human. But yeah, as you say, even if we do count that, and the couple of other things where you said there'd been missteps, she was queen for 70 years. I don't think she did too bad a job.
I've made some pretty colossal fuck-ups in my jobs that I've been in for far less time than that. Yes, I'm prepared to forgive few for pretty much everything. But on the subject of the monarchy, obviously, now that King Charles III's on the throne, all the rampant anti-monarchist Republicans have come out of the woodwork, abolished the monarchy. They've got more than we have, etc., etc. Oh, look at you bowing and scraping and doffing your cap to these superiors. They're not so... Take all that away from it. I don't look at them as, God, your worship. You have to imagine I love the monarchy. The monarchy is an institution. It's the backbone of the country for over 1,000 years. And it represents that full stop between Britain, the UK, England, if you like, and America, Russia, China. Name any democratic place where they've got a president and look at all the massive problems that they have either had or had in the past. America, I'm looking at you. Donald Trump, what the hell went on? You've got 330 million of you over there. That was the best you can do. And look what happened when there's nobody beyond the top politician to say no. Now, the Queen, I don't know whether she ever actually exercised the right, but she had the power to turn around and say, if some crazy crackpot decision came before her, she had the power to turn around and say, I'm not signing that, mate.
Yeah.
Don't know whether she ever did, but Putin, there's nobody there to stop him.
Yeah. If Liz Truss decided tomorrow that she was going to invade, it would be somewhere stupid. So like Belgium.
Belgium, yes.
Then even if the whole government, and we can't predict how the government are going to behave, even if they all agree to say, yeah, brilliant, let's go and do that, the king could and hopefully would step in. And as you say, I don't think the Queen ever did exercise that power but it's just knowing that power is there. And yeah, I agree. When we looked at the lying in state and the queue that was 5 miles long, people queuing up for 15, 16 hours. When we saw the funeral, I mean, we both watched the funeral for
8 hours.
Yeah.
Longer than that, yeah.
Yeah. And that wouldn't happen, using America. If Joe Biden died, then, everyone would be very upset. You'd have a new president tomorrow, whoever's meant to step in. And yeah, there'd probably be a big funeral for him, but there wouldn't be all that. There's something there, and it goes to show how it meant something to so many people. You know, we saw the BBC News. We will be talking about the BBC in a few weeks. It's a shame that we recorded that episode before this because we'd have so much more to say. But their coverage has been unstoppable. It's been a brilliant example. But they were interviewing in the period between during the lying in state. For 24 hours a day, they didn't have anything to report on. They were just interviewing people who were queuing up to see the Queen's coffin. And even that was fascinating viewing because there were people from all different walks of life, people from different places, people who were just popping in on their way to work, people who travelled from the other side of the world. And to just say, oh, well, yeah, it's just costing us too much money. But we wouldn't have had that. We won't have... presumably when Charles is crowned sometime next year, I think it would be quite tactless of them to have a huge, massive coronation on the scale of the Queen's. But there's going to be something. Whereas, yeah, I know what you mean.
They are our ambassadors. And now, whatever you like to think of it, whether you're for or against, and the main argument I've heard against the royal family is money. Basically, why should they have all this money? Well, you've got 1,000 years worth of institution there. What are you going to do with it? Let's just say they gave away whatever money they've got. I think it's the combined total of wealth, including assets. I think it's something like £1 billion. In the grand scheme of things, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they spent 37 times that amount on track and trace. In the grand scheme of things, there's the same amount of money that the royal family costs in total. Half of that a month net we used to send to Europe.
Yeah.
I'm not a great believer in the EU, but no one ever questioned £500 million a month of our money going to it. The royals are all around the world, or they're a team around the world. And whatever you like to think, people do sit up and take notice of the royals. Now, there's been rumblings in a few of the Commonwealth countries immediately after the death of the Queen, and the royals had a tour. They just happened to have a tour planned anyway. There were rumblings of independence as soon as they'd been and gone. That to me is fine. That's a perfectly understandable reaction in the mid-21st century. I don't have any...
It's progression.
It is progression. Yeah. But to say that they're not worth it, I think at the last count it was 64 pence each per person per year. Take my money. Yeah, I'll give you... There's a quid.
Yeah.
Keep the change. I don't hold with any argument that says that we'd be better off with a republic, because that money would just be swallowed up into something else with far less grandeur and far less historical significance.
Yeah. So it was really interesting because our friends from America were over here at this time, and it was fascinating to see how they were reacting to it because they don't have anything like that. And they were talking...
Melania.
That's it. They had, and they were talking about the Queen had been on the throne for 70 years, and they were like, that's a quarter of our country's history. She's been on it, and just things like that. We went to York for the night and showed them around, and obviously we were showing them some of the historical pubs. Of
course,
but we went to York Minster, which was unfortunately closed because it was the period of mourning. But that's where everyone was laying the flowers for the Queen, and it was such a weird, eerie thing. But they were blown away by the fact that York Minster was over 1,000 years old, and it was just this huge, huge building. But then when we're talking about the history of some of the monarchs, and we went to the Shambles, and they said this, it was recorded in the Doomsday Book. They were like, well, what's the Doomsday Book? And we said, well, that was when William the Conqueror just did a survey of all the property in the country, and it recorded every piece of land and who owned it and what it was used for. And they said, well, when was that? It was in 1066 or 1068. And they were just blown away. But that's how far back the royal family and traditions go. And some of them do seem a bit silly these days, don't they? But then it's all part and parcel of it. And if you take it away, and there's arguments, do we modernise the monarchy? And there is an argument of, yes, make it a bit more accessible to people. But then if you have a a king, like the King of Spain, who, who just
has a beard.
Yes, he has a beard, and and he gets the bus and things like that, and that's great. But I think there is still a place for that sort of ceremonial, the pageantry and things like that.
Well, looking at the funeral yesterday, there was the orb and sceptre and the crown that were all placed on cushions on the altar. Now, if you look at that, it's quite a silly thing to do.
Yeah.
But did it not add something to the ceremony?
Absolutely.
That reverence, because it was the same crown that's been passed from monarch to monarch to monarch.
Yeah, and removing it from the Queen's coffin and placing it on the altar was like, that's it. She's not the Queen anymore.
Yeah.
And then the guy, I can't remember who he was, and he broke his wand of office in
Lord
half.
Chamberlain, yes.
The Lord Chamberlain, yeah. And the person who was doing the commentary said, his duty is done. His Queen is not here. And he snapped his wand. And it showed the king's face at that moment.
Oh, it looked like he was about to burst into
He did,
tears.
yeah. And it was because that sort of symbol, that was the end, wasn't it? That was a very moving moment. Like you say, to anyone watching who didn't have the commentary on or didn't understand what it was about, it might have seemed a bit silly and a bit over the top. But they all have a place. They all have a meaning. And for the royal family who were there, who it was their mum's funeral or the grandma's funeral or the great-grandma's funeral, they understood what it all meant, and it clearly meant a lot to them.
Well, if you looked at the old buildings, I mean, the Westminster Abbey was started in 1100. So that's 1,000 years old. And Windsor Chapel, I mean, that's a big bloody chapel. That's all the weight of history. There's 10 monarchs buried there. You mentioned Mark and Paul there. They were astounded that the pub one of the pubs I do my quiz in is twice as old as America itself. We've just got a great weight behind us in this country. There were a couple of quite witty things. Every now and again, the bird app does lay beautiful eggs. But one of them was most monarchs only bury their predecessor. The Queen buried 2 of her predecessors, and in a move that nobody expected, Richard III. But the other one was that there are bottles of milk in this fridge now that have seen 2 prime ministers and 2 monarchs. 2-day-old babies that are already on their second monarch.
Yeah, he was quite a week. But yeah, I mean, definitely the Americans coming over, and that gave it a new perspective on it, especially because they were asking us to explain some of the things, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And then some of the things we didn't know. So we would then look it up, and it was like, oh, right, why? And they were asking questions about the line of succession. So why is Princess Anne not after Prince Charles, and so on. But yeah, it was really interesting, and I think that really helped bring home what a big deal it's been for the past couple of weeks.
One of the things that was on the BBC coverage yesterday, which I thought was one of the most pithy barbs I've ever heard, was courtesy of Hugh Edwards, who did a really, really good job. He set the tone. I mean, he set the tone really over the past fortnight.
Yes, he was the one who broke the news.
Yeah. The black tie was a bit of a giveaway. When they were all arriving at the Abbey, he said about all the world leaders, all the leaders of the UK, all gathering. Nicola Sturgeon also there. There was just that pause long enough.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing, yeah.
What a pro.
Honestly, I have been on Twitter all day today just praising the BBC, the presenters, obviously all the camera crews, everyone who was involved in that amazing broadcast. It was absolutely the right tone. It was something that people would have been watching all over the world. And I think it goes to show that when the viewing figures, or the first viewing figures, almost all of the people in the UK who watched the funeral watched it on BBC One.
I think so too.
Yes.
The vast majority will have done.
Yeah. And
for all those defund the BBC people, if you can genuinely turn around and say that any of because they were all using the same camera feed. They didn't all have their own.
Yes.
I think even Sky had the same camera. If you can say that the BBC didn't do it better than everyone else, bollocks. It's no disrespect to any of the other broadcasters. You just don't do it as well.
No.
There's just no part of me that's going to play this down as a small event. As a historical event in the fabric of the country, it's the biggest thing. I don't think we're ever going to see another monarch on the throne for 70 years.
No.
Seems very unlikely. As a final thought, yesterday when the BBC were interviewing people, they had a historian on, and I forget his name, but he brought up a very interesting note, which I think has a big future potential. It's the Queen's diaries, the Queen's personal diaries. Now, she's obviously never really expressed an opinion on everything.
Yes.
But it's widely believed that she's kept a rigorous personal diary for a long while, if not continuously, certainly. And presumably, she will have known full well that at some point they would be either entered into an archive or published after her death. They'll be bloody interesting to read.
Yes, that's going to be... Because obviously she was the Queen. She had to have this facade. But for all the people who were interviewed, who knew her, who worked with her, always said she had opinions on things, but she also had a wicked sense of humour.
Yes.
So, some of those diaries are going to be... I mean,
she's outlived all of them. It doesn't matter anymore. She can say what she likes about all of them.
Exactly. Did it also, the Archbishop of Canterbury, in his sermon at the funeral, did you hear him having a sly dig at Boris Johnson?
No.
He was talking about how the Queen, basically along the lines of it's a really good quote, through living in service, she'll be remembered forever, whereas those who are in power only for their own benefit and desperately cling on to the privilege will be forgotten immediately. And then he looked over to where the prime ministers were sitting. And I don't know whether it was, but it was very...
I don't know how I missed that, but that was a little...
Well done.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know whether I agree with that occasion, Archbishop.
He was like, I've got my moment. Nobody watches my speech at Christmas. So this is...
So, yes, I think it's beyond rating, isn't it? There isn't a scale high enough. But we are both sat here in complete support of the system that we have now. There's just nothing to me that could replace a monarchy as just one of the colossal main symbols of Britain. Now, whether the Union still stays together, they're still going to be very English. It's still going to be an English thing. But they are the fabric of the entire nation, and they embody our history stretching back well over 1,000 years. And for that alone, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, Queen! Yes, Queen! Yes, Queen!
But yes, I think, we could talk all night about it, and I'm sure we'll come back and revisit the royal family. At some point, we'll probably have a coronation special.
Yes.
But it's been a very different and a very sad time, but also a nice time to sort of remember and to commemorate the life of, regardless of what you think about the royal family, a remarkable woman.
Indeed. God rest you, man. And God save the King.
God save the King.
Nine Bob Note featured Paul Isles Rush and Ken Moss. Title music was by Mark Shyman, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.